Good morning, it's Loren Lockman from the Tanglewood Wellness Center in Costa Rica. I've been asked this morning to talk a little bit about what happens after the fast. We've spoken a lot about the fasting process and about what your body is doing and how to create the highest level of health, but I've also mentioned to you that until you've experienced something, you can't really know what's possible. So, very valid question this morning is, what are we going to experience after we're done? Here we spent all this time investing in getting our body as clean and well-functioning as possible. What are we going to notice? What's going to be different for us? And first of all, I think you guys all know, but for anybody watching, remember that it can be up to 6 weeks after you complete the fasting and refeeding process before you get to 100%, right? So, you're on your 4th day of refeeding, you're probably not yet feeling all the benefits of the process. 4 days into refeeding, in the morning of the 4th day, not likely. And in fact, you're also on their 4th day and are still feeling weak and tired because of what's going on for you. That almost certainly will change significantly by the time you're finished here, but it's still going to be another 6 weeks before you see the significant changes that are possible. So what kinds of things are going to happen for you? Well, everything. So really what we're talking about is a complete shift in your system. Now, we're looking at something that the bioimpedance analyzer gives us, which may be a bit of a silly concept, called metabolic age. And it will show for some of you a significant decrease. For some people from maybe older than they really are down to much younger than they really are, as the body gets clean and breaks down excess fat and so forth. And that I'm sure is in no way accurate of anything. It's an interesting idea, but I don't know that anybody here really has any part of their being is 12 or 14 years old, which the machine is saying is true for some of us. However, it's a symbol. It's symbolic of what's happening, because what's true is that your body throughout the fast is pumping out high levels of human growth hormone. And human growth hormone is called the youthing hormone. Now, you can take human growth hormone supplements, but they're very expensive, and like anything else, when we try to manipulate the body from outside, we usually don't get it right. So I promise you there are negative impacts if you're not taking what's appropriate for your body. I wouldn't recommend anybody take human growth hormone supplements, or as most of you probably know, any supplements at all. But the good news is that when you're fasting, your virtually infinitely intelligent body knows exactly what it needs to do for maximum benefit. And so when I talk about people getting younger as a result of fasting, this is literal. I mean, you are literally growing younger through the process. How much younger, of course, is going to be relative. You're 23, and he's much older than that. So while your real physiological age may decrease by 5 or 6 or 8 years, his could be as much as 2 or more decades. It could be 20 years or more, depending on the length of the fast, right? And what's happening in the body. It's all going to be relative to the age of the body. What does that mean? Well, now, again, at 23, you had some issues, and that's why you're here in the first place. But many of the things that tend to start to break down with time, you probably hadn't experienced yet at 23. Most 23-year-olds can take a lot for granted, including the way their joints work and so forth. Most people, by the time they're 50, 60, 70, are experiencing some issues with some of those things. So for anybody that's older, you're likely to see a dramatic improvement in your ease of movement as your joints become more flexible, more open. Your body becomes more open. I mean, we talk about flexibility. You typically gain flexibility without yoga just by getting your body hydrated. Because as we've talked about before, hydrated tissues are flexible tissues. So if we were to just look at the hydration piece, which doesn't change dramatically while you're fasting, but which fasting alone seems to be capable of creating the conditions so that you can actually become fully hydrated. Well, what does that mean? Well, eyesight improves for virtually everybody. Now again, how was your eyesight before you started?
Perfect.
Not perfect. Well, it's very possibly going to become perfect. Now, most of you have probably experienced that your senses have become much more acute during the process. Is that true? Have you noticed that? Sense of smell, hearing, etc. Can be a bit frustrating at times because you can't control the environment around you, and you're experiencing those things in a way that you normally don't. But we see permanent improvement in senses for many people. And so I think I mentioned to you before, I had a client whose claim to fame was that he was, for over 20 years, a member of the loudest rock and roll band in his city. That was their claim to fame. And he had lost a significant amount of his hearing because he'd been playing this music for so many years. He got virtually all of that back as a result of fasting. I had a young man who had been abusing cocaine for several years and had completely lost his sense of smell, okay, which might be useful when you're fasting. In fact, in his case, it would have been because he and his father fasted with me together when we were still in the U.S. over the winter when the building was closed up. And I walked in the room one day and said, someone here needs to take a shower, because it was rank in that room with these two guys. But he completely regained his sense of smell in just 2 weeks' time. So anyone who's had any loss, vision, whatever, any of the senses, you're going to see dramatic improvement in those things. Again, flexibility. Anybody who's lost any height, which doesn't typically happen at 23, but typically does happen by 65, people begin shrinking as their discs compress. And they compress largely because they're losing water. They're losing water because the body is purposely taking water to make up for places it doesn't have enough, okay, as a result of long-term chronic dehydration. So as a result of that reversing, we're going to see all kinds of things shift, including regained height. We've talked about skin elasticity. Now again, the question was coming from our youngest guest here. And these are the kinds of things, your skin is probably still pretty elastic at 23, whereas much less so at 50-something, right? 56 or 65, or whatever it is. There's going to have been some loss for most people at those ages, not so much at 23. One of the things that virtually everyone is going to notice is there's going to be a dramatic shift in elimination, both kinds, both solid and liquid. So many of you came in normally waking up 1, 2, or more times every night to pee. And some people out there are telling you that's how it should be if you're drinking enough water. Absolutely not. Remember, again, let's go back to my test. What would you do if you were living in the tropical jungle? In the tropical jungle. So it's dark, and you're in the tropical jungle, and there's snakes and spiders and all kinds of critters out there. You can't see in the dark very well. You really want to get up and go try to pee somewhere in the middle of the night? Probably not. You don't have flashlights. This is, if we're actually living in nature, it would be a lot more convenient if you could lay down before it got dark and wake up, and get up only once it was light again. And you can, because when your system is clean and functioning properly, as long as you don't eat or drink just before bedtime, you will never need to wake up to pee. If you're waking up to pee at night, it means there's something going on. Either you're consuming liquid or wet foods late in the evening, or your body is cleansing something that is affecting your urinary tract in such a way your body says, let's get this out of here, something that's irritating the system, and so you're eliminating. And again, if you're eliminating voiding your bladder more than once per night and not drinking, then that's definitely because you're having something that's irritating your system, dumping into your bladder. Well, most of you are going to completely eliminate that stuff so that by the time you're done here, you will be able to sleep through the night. Now, I can't guarantee that for everyone, and of course it depends on the length of the fast, and importantly, critically, it depends on the length of the fast relative to the condition of your system. Some people might need 5 or 6 weeks to get all that stuff out of their bodies, and some people might do that in 2 weeks. But most of you are going to be able to get most of that done, and are going to you've already gone from a high of 7 or 8 times per night to to one time last night for the first time. In how long?
The whole time.
No, before that. You were waking up before that too, before you came here, right? One time a night, I think that's a new low for a long time. That's awesome, okay? You're going to get to the point where you never wake up at night to pee. Let's talk about the other side, right? Elimination through the colon. I know, having suffered with irritable bowel syndrome for 3 years, and I know there are many people out there dealing with similar conditions. For a lot of people, eliminating through the colon is not a pleasant experience. It's often painful, it's difficult, it's often time-consuming. Some people spend hours in the bathroom and don't do much, and you'd be shocked. I was just telling someone on the phone, a client I'm working with over the phone, how many people have told me over the last 20 years, oh, my elimination's perfectly fine, I have 2 bowel movements a week. Well, unless you're only eating twice a week, that's a problem, okay, because there should be a bowel movement for every meal. So 3 meals a day, 3 bowel movements a day. Most people don't do that. You guys are going to start doing that. If you're having 3 full meals a day, you will have 3 bowel movements a day. They will be quick, they will be painless, they will be clean, they will not be stinky. It's going to completely transform your experience. Now, if you have been in the habit of enjoying your 2 hours of alone time in the bathroom every day, you're not going to need to do that anymore. It's going to shift, because you're going to be done in like 2 minutes instead of 20 or 30, as some people require every time they go to have a bowel movement. It's going to be quick, painless, fast. You're going to spend a lot less money on toilet paper, unless you like to hang it from the trees, because you just won't need it anymore, because it's going to not be messy. It's going to be very clean. Again, this is assuming that you follow the program I'm going to give you. I'm going to send you out of here with. If you go back to eating other stuff, it's going to get messy and stinky and difficult all over again, okay? Because it's dependent on high water, high fiber content foods that we're designed to be eating. As long as you're consuming those things, and exclusively those things, you'll have no problem eliminating. Most of you are going to find that your more efficient than ever body needs less food than it did before. This is one of the reasons, by the way, that we ramp up your caloric intake slowly. Okay? Right? Slower than you'd like right now, I'm sure. But truthfully, you're not like feeling hungry all day, are you? You feel satisfied. And the thing is, you're eating almost nothing still, 4th day. Very little food. When we ramp it up slowly, we never force the metabolism to speed way up. You could go and eat 20 bananas at the next meal, but you would likely, you'd probably feel bad. And, if you kept doing that, you'd be forcing your body. If your body was able to. Now, not everyone's metabolism is able to ramp up, and what happens to those people? They gain weight. And these are all the folks who get taken down off some of the sites that are promoting eating a lot. If you post that, I gained a lot of weight, they'll just take you off the site. They don't want that on there. But it happens. I see these people all the time. They contact me and say, I tried this, it didn't work. I'll say, well, how much were you eating? Well, you should eat as much as you can, right? No, of course not. So some people are not going to, their bodies are not going to respond where metabolism is able to increase. But for those people who do, it's not a blessing. Your metabolism increasing means your body is doing much more work to process food in order to get the same amount of energy. We don't want to do that. That's making us less efficient. So you've now become much more efficient and can start to consume less than you did before. What you want to do is be listening to your body, because some people think, well, I need, like before I was eating, and they go back and do that. They start to push their metabolism back up. There's no advantage to that. The only advantage to that is you can eat more if you like eating. But I think what you want to do is get to the point where you're super efficient, keep your body as clean as possible, because then you enjoy every meal much more. You enjoy every meal when your body is functioning as well as possible. You taste it. You actually, you have a completely different experience than when your body starts to become bogged down, as it happens for many people when they overeat. That's a significant piece. Anybody who had any issues with deficiencies, if you weren't able to get everything you needed easily from your food, if you're eating optimally now, you should have no problem at all, because your much more efficient system is going to easily get what it needs from the food. Optimal digestion means optimal absorption, which means optimal assimilation. Okay? So anything that was related to deficiencies, that's going to shift for you. Bottom line, I mean, you're going to be more flexible. I mentioned that. Bottom line, I think, is that you're going to find that your more efficient system is going to do everything better. So some people are going to find they're much more clear mentally. And I'm surprised. You know, I've been shocked at how often I now hear from people in their 20s that they're walking around with brain fog all the time. It used to be that happened later in life. It happens to most people, but it happens later on. Doesn't have to happen at all. I mean, you know, again, I'm an open book. I believe in transparency, so I'm not proud of it, but it is what it is. I spent most of my high school years stoned on marijuana. And by the time I was in college, I often had a hard time connecting the dots. I wasn't stupid, but there was all this brain fog in the way, or you know, brain smoke in my case, in the way. That completely cleared when I got my body clean. And you know, maybe if you guys have noticed, I'm often able to recall things. You know, I'm talking about stories from years ago, and I don't remember every detail necessarily, but my brain works as well as it ever has. And that's significant, because there are very few people at 52 who can say that. That's not the case for most people at 52. Most people start to see significant decrease in function. Okay? They don't have to. In fact, most people are seeing significant decrease in function in virtually every way, and they don't have to. So literally, you know, again, the metabolic age thing, it's kind of silly. The machine says my metabolic age is 12. Well, I don't know what that means. But what I can tell you is that I function a lot like I did as a teenager, if not a 12-year-old. My body works just as well as it ever did. It's just as flexible. It's just as strong. It's just as fit. I don't get injured as a result. You know, it's easier to maintain balance. I mean, what happens when your head is clogged up with mucus? What happens? Well, the eustachian tubes in our ears help us with balance. So if your head is clogged up, you're going to have a hard time keeping balance. And that means you're more likely to get injured, right? I mean, it's honestly trying to catalog all the potential benefits would be almost impossible, because it's far-reaching. It affects every single aspect of our being. The most significant of which I would say personally is the connection. And this, you know, this is a little bit woo-woo, but I believe we're kind of like computers. You know, you buy a computer today, it comes loaded with a whole bunch of stuff. But with a good connection to the internet, you got access to all the information in the entire universe. It's all available from your keyboard, right? Well, same way. I mean, you were born with a whole bunch of information already there, and the potential to connect to all the information that's ever existed in the universe. But not very many of us are able to do that, because the connection's not very good, because we're not vibrating at the frequency we're designed to vibrate at. But when you get your body clean and fully hydrated, and you begin to vibrate that way, you have access to stuff you never had access to before. Okay? I think you're going to find it also, you're going to find it easier to be balanced and centered most of the time. Now, you know, if any of you know me well enough, you can tell it's not necessarily perfect. It's not going to be perfect after 1 or even 40 fasts, but it's an improvement. And that's the thing you want to understand. You know, I've been accused of like boasting about how smart or whatever. It's not that. I'm not comparing myself to anybody else. What I'm interested in is maximizing my potential. Now, my potential may not be, it may only be 60% of what your potential is. There's no point in comparing myself to you. I want to compare myself to my potential. How am I doing relative to what's possible for me? And what I found is, you know, I am much better able to maximize that potential by getting my body clean and keeping it that way in every way possible. So, any other questions about any of that? Yeah.
I just want to point out there's a sense of also optimism.
Exactly.
Too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's significant. That really is about the spiritual connection. You know, optimism is understanding that we live in an abundant universe. How can you be pessimistic when you know there's always enough? There's, you know, it's everything shifts when your paradigm shifts, when your overall global way of looking at things changes from woe is me, I'm a victim, to, I mean, you guys have known I've been through some pretty intense stuff, like losing every single thing I owned less than 2 years ago. And yet, even at the time, I thought, all right, you know, this kind of sucks. Like, it's never fun to have the rug pulled out from under you. But at the same time, I realized almost immediately, I wonder what better things may be waiting for me, may be available to me now as a result of this. You know, realizing that maybe the universe was saying to me, this is what you need to do now, right? This is going to prompt you to go do something better, bigger, more appropriate, more beneficial to the world and other people. Who knows? I would encourage you all to think that way all the time in every situation, regardless of what's happening. And I think you're absolutely right, Lidan. When your system is clear and functioning well and you're vibrating that way, it's almost impossible not to be coming from that place most of the time. Any other questions?
I had a question about like workout recovery.
Yeah, absolutely. Workout recovery. Great point. You know, studies have long shown that vegan non-athletes have faster muscle recovery than non-vegan athletes. All right, so someone who's an athlete that's not a vegan, that's eating animal products, and this is what they do. They're an athlete and they're doing this all the time. They tend to recover more slowly than a vegan who's not an athlete. I absolutely have found for myself and other people, recovery time, it's huge. And it's not just recovering from stressing your muscles, but recovering from anything. So healing, when healing is, I think I've told you guys, well, I probably haven't told you guys all my stories, but I'll give you just one piece of one story that represents this. When I may have told you about having a pull-up bar support break when I was at the top of pull-up four or so years ago, my place in Panama, and I'm at the top of a pull-up, and this is above our concrete carport, and so I because there was a little knee wall under my feet, I would bend my knees and lock my ankles behind me, up near my butt. So this thing, the support breaks, and I fall 5 feet onto my knees, onto the concrete, and I broke my right kneecap, and I broke the top of this bone right here. I think I did point this out early in this process for some of you. You can probably see the point on this kneecap, some of you, that didn't exist before. Anyway, the point is, a month, I did not do anything except fast. I got off my feet. Now with both of them, we were open. I still had to work, but I had crutches, and I would vary which leg I favored depending on which hurt more that day. But I would stay off them as much as I could and use only one at a time. And yet a month later, I was beating my interns running up. We had a pretty steep hill. Our driveway was, 300 or 400 yards, I guess. And it was a hill that went up to the top. And I would have our interns run up that hill. I would run with them before this. But a month later, I was beating them running up the hill. And by the way, no intern ever beat me running up that hill. Now, they were coming off their fasts. But this was including 13 weeks after they finished refeeding, a quarter of a year later. No intern ever beat me. And I'm not a runner. I'm just a guy with a clean system. So it recovered very quickly and was, yeah.
Also, you mentioned something about that innate intuition, so like you know exactly, you're so in touch with your body that you know like what it needs, what to eat, things like that.
Yeah, exactly. Well, again, I believe that each of us is born with perfect intuition, and it's always there, and it's always been available to us, but all the crap in our systems winds up disconnecting us, putting up a shield between us and actually receiving those messages clearly. And so most of us have not been getting those messages throughout our lives. And I mean, I think that's apparent given where we wind up, where you guys each wound up before coming here. You obviously weren't, you either weren't getting all the messages from your body or you weren't heeding them all. And it was exactly the same thing for me at your age, when I first got as sick as I did at 23. Now, nearly 30 years later, I'm not pretending it's perfect, but by simply listening to my body and never thinking, should I eat more of this or that? Simply listening to my body. When I actually do that, I do incredibly well consistently now for many, many years. Okay, I mean, I've been doing this now for 26 years and consistently works very well.